Hi, fourth grade. We're going to be needing your week 3 California Studies weekly newsletter. So we're going to be reading this together, okay? So go ahead and grab it. And since this is a recording, you have the ability to hit the pause button, rewind, re-listen to it as many times as you need to make sure that you're understanding everything that I'm saying, all right? So we are going to read the very first page together. Right under it, the title is How to Build a Paradise on Earth. Imagine watching a long, exciting movie of North America being formed. You would see the land cooling from the hot, molten mass of Earth's crust and slowly becoming the land we know today. The opening scenes would show the continent, a large piece of the Earth's crust that stands above the oceans, breaking away from other land masses and gradually pushing towards the west. So they're talking about, imagine one big solid piece of land and then it breaking apart. So it used to be one big continent, and then when it was forming, it broke apart and it formed into different landforms, which is what we call the world now. So for ages, the inland seas would wash over the barren land, and then mighty mountains around the edges of the continent would bunch up and push above the waters. Rain and wind would wear the mountains down to sand, and the oceans would wash over them. This amazing process would repeat over and over again. Finally, after a very long time, the inland seas would dry up, and the seas near the coast would drain off. You would see our continent covered with layers of dead sea creatures, soil, and rocks. Suddenly, volcanoes would explode to life and start building huge mountain ranges. Vegetation would start growing in thick forests, swamps, and jungles. Occasionally, the ocean would come inland again, washing sand and dirt over the land to bury some forests. When the ocean finally left, new forests would start growing again. But the land didn't stop moving and changing. As our continent continued drifting to the west, the large tectonic plates, they're interlocking pieces of land that connected our state, rubbed, crashed into other parts of the Earth's crust. So in California, we are located on what we call tectonic plates. And when those tectonic plates, they're underneath our lands that we stand on, when they start to shift, that's how earthquakes occur, when the plate tectonics are moving. Sometimes they go one above another, sometimes they just shift back and forth, sometimes they move apart. Okay, so that's what plate tectonics is. That's what causes earthquakes. As these plates move against each other, a lot of heat and destruction took place. The rocks were under such powerful pressures and forces that the rocks rubbing together actually melted. This caused earthquakes, the shaking of the ground when the Earth's tectonic plates move. And it says continued on page 4. So what that means is you're going to be right here, okay? Oh no, on the very back page, I'm just going to say, the very back page, it's going to say how to build a paradise on Earth in the bottom right-hand corner. If you can't find it, pause this, try and find it on the back page, okay? Underwater volcanoes. These rubbles and tumbles are all part of our Earth's constant process of shifting and changing. After millions of years, volcanoes, glaciers, moving land masses, storms, and earthquakes, the land was finally shaped into what we now call California. Warm sun, long beaches, sculpted mountains, magnificent forests and landscapes, spacious cities, and the most fertile land in the country. It's just about perfect. It is hard to believe that such terrible forces were at work for so long to produce this beautiful state of ours. But the truth is, such forces are still at work. All of nature's change happens slowly and takes a long, long time. Earthquakes and volcanoes come along once in a while to speed things up, but the bigger changes take ages. Okay, the movie's over. Now let's see how our state turned out. So you're going to open up your newsletter, and at the very top, it's titled California Regions. California is broken up into 4 regions. we have the Pacific Coast region, the desert region, the Central Valley region, and the mountains region. So there's 4 regions in California. First, we're going to learn about the Pacific Coast. But I want you to take a look. Notice how, look at the title, it says Pacific Coast region. There's a number 1 next to it. Find that number 1. If you look to the left of that, there's a map of California that you can see. When it's talking about number 1, Pacific Coast region, the number 1s on the map show you the Pacific Coast region. So all along the coast. The coast is when the land meets the water. That is what a coast is. That's why we call it the Pacific Coast. We call it the Pacific Coast because California is right alongside the Pacific Ocean. So it makes sense for it to call it, it makes sense for us to call it the Pacific Coast region. So we're going to read that together. The Pacific Coast region. Our coastal region is an 840-mile-long stretch of land that lies between us and the Pacific Ocean. Where oceans meet the land, most of our coast is rocky with cliffs that come right down to the water. When the tide leaves, small pools of water are left behind, where a whole universe of ocean life can be found. That's where you can find sea stars, clams, crabs, jellyfish, snails, mussels, urchins, kelp, small fish, and other kinds of life. But in other places, beautiful sandy beaches stretch out for miles. The coast is a favorite place for people to visit, swim, fish, soak up the sun, or just take pictures. Our coast also has its own mountains called the Coast Range. These mountains stand between our Central Valley and the ocean. Among the mountains are many beautiful valleys where thousands of orchards, groves, vineyards, ranches, and farms can be found. Cattle and sheep live there too. Many valuable minerals are mined from the Coast Range, and you can find a lot of trees growing there, from pine forests to the mighty redwood giants. Number 2, the desert. Notice how desert only has 1 S. To help you remember how to spell desert and dessert, desserts are super sweet, so there's 2 S's in dessert, and there's only 1 S in desert because it's not super sweet. Desert is just sweaty. That's why there's only 1 S. Dessert, super sweet. That's why there's 2 S's in dessert. So that's a little tidbit. So the desert. Look for the number 2 on the map of California. Find where that number 2 is, and that's the desert region. A desert, I'm reading under number 2, titled Desert. A desert is a place where less than 10 inches of rain fall in a year. Our deserts average less than 5 inches a year. Our 3 main deserts are the Mojave Desert, the Colorado Desert, and the Great Basin. Our deserts get so hot that you can fry an egg on a rock, and it gets so cold at night that water will freeze. Wow. Near our eastern border is a desert called Death Valley. Hundreds of animals and plants make their homes there. They have adapted to the climate and do very well. Most people who live in the desert stay indoors during the hot seasons, but during the winter, they are very active outdoors. In a few desert valleys, irrigation has helped farmers raise crops and keep livestock. Irrigation is getting water to the farmland. So instead of, if they didn't have that water system with irrigation, the land would be too hard to farm because there's not enough water. But the irrigation system allows the water to make the land fertile so they can actually have crops grow in the desert. In a few desert valleys, irrigation has helped farmers raise crops and keep livestock. If you visit the desert, listen at night for the sounds of desert creatures such as coyotes, owls, and look for lizards, rabbits, Gila monsters, horned toads, roadrunners, and many more animals. We're going to move on to number 3. The 3rd region of California is titled the Central Valley. So find the number 3 on the map. Notice how it's in the center of California. Probably that's why we call it the Central Valley, because it's in the center of California, right? Central, center. Center is the root word of central. About half of California's fruits, vegetables, and nuts are grown in one place, our very own Central Valley. This lush and beautiful place is about 400 miles long and 500 miles wide, and is surrounded by mountains on all sides. Sacramento, California's capital city, is found in this region. The Central Valley is actually two valleys created by the Sacramento River and the San Joaquin River. Long ago, these rivers cut a mile-wide gap in the mountains on the west that eventually led all the way to San Francisco Bay and out to the ocean. The valley's rich, fertile soil, combined with plenty of sunshine and moisture, makes the Central Valley perfect for growing almost anything. So notice how it said the valley's rich, fertile soil combined with sunshine and moisture. That helps make the Central Valley perfect for growing almost anything. One town that used Central Valley rivers to grow and expand was Fresno. Early farmers used Central Valley rivers to irrigate their crops by building canals. Their success led to the growth of Fresno into a major farming settlement. More than 200 different kinds of crops are produced there. Wow, dairy and beef cattle and chickens love it here. Most people who live in the Central Valley make their living from the farms or are somehow connected to agriculture. Agriculture is the farm way of life, so they're connected to the land somehow. The southern part of the Central Valley isn't very great for crops, but it is rich with many oil and gas fields. Region number 4 is titled the Mountain Region. So number 4, you need to find where the number 4s are on the map. Now, once you've found that, we're going to read together about the Mountain Region. Among the California-Nevada border to the east lies a massive rock wall more than 400 miles long and 70 miles wide. These are the mighty Sierra Nevada, the snowy mountain range. The tallest peak in the United States outside of Alaska is here. It is Mount Whitney, and it stands at 14,494 feet high. Many other peaks in the Sierra Nevada also measure more, around 14,000 feet tall. Rushing rivers have cut beautiful canyons in the region. Yosemite National Park is the most famous of these. Most of California gold comes from these mountains. Rushing rivers have cut beautiful canyons in the region. Yosemite National Park is the most famous of these. Most of California's gold comes from these mountains, as do silver, copper, granite, marble, and other materials. Cattle and sheep love the higher slopes of the mountains and orchards. Farms and small communities lie among the foothills. Giant sequoia trees, clear crystal lakes, glaciers, Lake Tahoe, wildlife, and wilderness make our Sierra Nevada a wonderful place to live or visit. Okay, now we're going to read this week's question. If you look right under where we just read from mountains, it's titled population density. You're going to go to left of that and it says this week's question, and there's a little shell next to it. How do we know what the climate was like millions of years ago? We know because deep layers of ice, soil sediments, and rocks cover the earth. Scientists have drilled thousands of feet into these layers for clues about our ancient atmosphere and climate. What are we finding? What they are finding is amazing. Shells and plankton, tiny life forms living in the ocean or fresh water, and layers of dust and clay tell us about ocean temperature. Bubbles of air trapped in ice tell us about the air that the dinosaurs breathed. Putting the information together gives us a great picture of what things looked like millions of years ago. Now, if you look at population density, the map that you see is a map of California. If you take a look to the right of the map, there's this little key, and if you look at the color, it's a colored key. If you look at the top, it's very dark green, and you see the less than sign, and there's a number 1 next to it. So we know that from math, that means less than 1. So that green color means that's less than 1. If you take a look at the top, it says population per square mile. So the population, that word means how many people live in that place. So the population of Pinole is a certain amount. The population of Martinez is a certain amount. The population of Concord is a certain amount. So we base the population by the cities that we live in. It's just how many people live in that city. When we talk about population, that's what it means. This map here, if you look, the dark green means not many people live there according to the map. It says less than one person per square mile is the population for that. If you take a look, there's the greens, and then there's yellows, and there's orange, and there's eventually a red. If you look at the very bottom of where that red is, it says greater than 5,000. That means the population is very dense. That means there's lots and lots of people in that specific area. So if you can look at all of the places on the map, there's the red places are the places that have the most people. So the question says for number two, for number one, which California region has the highest population density? We'll take a look at where all the red marks are on the map. And if you take a look at that map and then you compare it with the regions map that we looked at right above it, which region is that? Is it the Pacific Coast region? Is it the desert region? Is it the Central Valley? Or is it the mountains? Let's take a look, see if you can figure it out. Okay. The California region that has the highest population density, if you look, it's all along the coast. That's where it's the most heavily dense areas, most heavily populated. That means that the Pacific Coast region is the most heavily, what is the correct word? The highest population density, that's what I was looking for. Number two, it's saying which California region has the lowest population density. Now you need to look for the dark green on the map. Where in the dark green on the map, where is that? Which region is that located in? Is that located in the Pacific Coast region? No, because we just realized that that's where all the people live. That's not correct. So it either has to be the desert region, the Central Valley region, or the mountains region. And once you figure that out, I want you to write the answers down. So you're going to write it a pencil, write your answers down, okay? The Pacific Coast region is the highest population density. And then the lowest population density, you need to hit the pause button. You need to go find the answer, and then you need to write the answer down. The lowest population density region would be the mountains region. Not many people live in the mountains because they are mountains. It's harder to live up there in the mountain region. So it is the least populated area. Did you guys know that the California Valley quail is the California state bird? I want you to read that blurb on your own, and I want you to learn all about the state bird, okay? That is your assignment, okay? Because we've read everything else together. There are some questions in a Google Doc for you that you need to answer. You are more than welcome. You are strongly encouraged to use your newsletter that we just read together to help you answer the questions. And with that, that'll help you form full sentences for your answers to answer the questions in the Google Doc. Okay? I will see you guys later. Bye.